Wow, that's a hell of a way to start off an intro. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys already know this is episode number 2 on a Saturday. We're bringing another one to you later on today, so please tune in for that one as well. Now, before we get started, I would like to say for everybody who's tuning in, if you're tuning in anywhere from YouTube, and other than YouTube, do me a favor, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you've been notified every time that we drop a new episode. And yes, you already know that I have an amazing guest for you guys. This guy is freaking amazing, and you guys are going to learn a lot. So without before I bring him up here, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section. We'll be sure to answer those as we go. Now, this next guy, man, I love this dude, man. Like he's just a brother from another mother, man, and he has an amazing background, amazing story, and he does some amazing work. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring up my man, Mr. Chris, to the stage. Guys, help me welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, Tony. How you been?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm rocking and rolling. I'm still 10 toes above ground, so I can't complain, you know. And so now, before we get started, man, tell people who you are and where you're from about the work that you do.
Definitely, brother. So I'm an acceptance coach, and I help people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to step into their personal power and discover their self-acceptance. And I'm based out of Gig Harbor, Washington right now.
Nice, man. Nice. Thank you for the work that you do, man. Like we've connected on such a deep level. Got some amazing things going on and coming up and man, I can't wait for you to share your story with the audience, man. So tell people about your journey, man.
Definitely. So my journey has been anything but easy. I will share that straight up. I've always been the kid that's been knocked down 10 out of 10 times, and I still get up. I don't know why, but I just get back up and keep swinging because, truthfully, as I found out in the last 5 years, God's been behind my back, and He's always lifted me up and moved boulders and mountains out of my way so I can actually keep moving forward. So a little bit about my story, by the way. My life has had a lot of loss in it. I've had a lot of job loss, a lot of relationship loss. I've had a lot of, family loss. I've had, in 2020, I had my first real experience with death. And I'm not shy about talking about it because it rocked my world, but it was something that was a big gift that I never really saw till about a year after I went through it. But my grandfather had been fighting terminal blood cancer. He caught a rare cancer 4% of people get in the whole entire country every year. And so long story short, he fought that hard for 3 years, and I came home in the middle of COVID, and my grandpa passed away in my arms. And it was a very, lots of shock, lots of grief, lots of sadness, lots of anger, lots of, guilt, blame, and shame, all sorts of stuff just starts flying at you in that moment. And it kind of puts you in a kind of a parallel place of just, you don't know how to respond. You don't know how to deal with it. It's scary. So I did find through that loss a lot of empowerment that my grandpa's still with me. He's just there in different form. And so I had to learn to take that situation as a gift and a blessing and a lesson in my life. And when I chose to focus on that, it became a power move in my life. And it's one of the big pieces that led me to being a coach, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
My other story that I have, really briefly is 2 years after that, I lost my first child after going through some narcissistic abuse from my in-laws. And, my child, when he passed, by the way, it was a very sad, very heartbreaking thing. But at the same time, I got to experience God's love in full. I don't know how to explain it, but when I got to hold my son, it was like somebody put a curtain around me and my wife and my kid, and nothing mattered, nothing at all. And there was just love for this child. It was the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced at the same time. So, so to be fair, those two experiences, I had a choice to face in my life, and that choice was I can get depressed and ruin my life and blow things up. And I certainly took that path in the short term with it. But I saw that it was such a gift that I said, other people go through this stuff, and maybe they don't
Mm-hmm.
have somebody there to help them. And what if this all happened for me, not to me, happened for me? Because my gift in the planet right now is helping people through grief, loss, and trauma. And I would never be able to do it without experiencing those losses. So
Right.
I'm very blessed today to be able to say that.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And we've talked about this, man. I never tried to take away from anyone else's losses, right? We talk about child loss. It's that's a pain I don't wish on no one. I don't. But then, like I have a multitude as well. So there's, I separate them instead of trying to compare them. It's the relationship that I had with the individuals that I've lost, which dictated how I maneuvered, right? The choices that I've made. Um, and so, and then on top of there, I want to dive into some of the traumatic aspects of walking through life as a man, right? Because we got two guys up here that I've talked about it from a man's perspective, and and I tell people this, I go, man, when men grieve, it's like a foreign love language that no one understands, no one speaks, right? You know what I'm saying? But if you're around men who have gone through it, it's certain words that we say, certain things that we do that we can look at that individual and go, I see you, right? And I think for most of us, most people in the world, the biggest thing that we can do is see another individual's journey through the eyes of someone who's very empathetic, understanding. So let's talk about some of the traumatic things that you've had to endure in order to get to where you are, because it's the meat and the potatoes of your journey, right? So if you don't mind, walk us through some of those things.
Yeah, I can definitely. So I can share. When we found out we were pregnant with my son, it's hard for me to share these things, so I'm gonna do my best right now for
Oh
everybody.
no, you good, brother.
But I'm gonna share that when we decided to tell my in-laws, because we were back east, not around my family. My in-laws didn't even like recognize me in that moment when we told them. They recognized my wife and saw it as an opportunity for them, but they ignored me, and it was really hard for me to process that because my wife and I were ecstatic for both of us. We were excited. We struggled with infertility for a long time. I'm talking 10, 12, 14 years. It's been a long time. And so when you do get pregnant with a child, especially when you're going through infertility hurdles, man, that can feel like God's gift straight up. I mean,
Mhm.
you just feel nothing but blessing and love and gratitude, and appreciation for that life. And
Yeah.
so it was really hard, those months, by the way, that we were pregnant with him. I had to constantly protect my wife from her family because every time she would talk to them on the phone, um, they would always start yelling at her and attacking her for being anxious or not giving them information they wanted. And one conversation in particular, it was really traumatic for me. I got pretty haughty one day when they were yelling on the phone, and I told them both to knock it off. And my wife's sister had the audacity to yell back and say, "This pregnancy is not going the way I wanted it to go." And I just shook my head because I saw my wife cry and break down. And as a man, that is crushing to watch your wife be pregnant and hear that kind of stuff being said to her. That was really hurtful. And that was just one of many things we went through. There was another time that we wanted to figure out how to do a gender reveal, and her mom ruined it, took over the whole thing, and tried to just force my wife to do things her way. And it got to a point where it was toxic. And I'll say I was not my proudest person in that moment. I was very angry and upset about it. And it was because when you have a child coming into the world, there's this Papa Bear aspect. Talking about men who go through grief, Papa Bear comes out, and Papa Bear is a whole different animal from normal men.
Ain't that
From
the
what
truth?
I mean, I found myself like wanting to protect this child at all costs. It was something unworldly that came out of me. Um, and anyway, this stuff went on the whole entire pregnancy. And what I can share is the day we found out his heart stopped, my whole world stopped. Picture
Yeah.
driving down the freeway at 70, 80 miles an hour, and you hit the brakes full on. You just stomp the brake pedal. That's what it feels like. Your whole world stops, and
Yeah.
you're not in that place of worrying about all sorts of things. All of a sudden, the one thing that was most important to you and the one thing that actually mattered is now gone. It's
Yeah.
just taken from you. And and at that point, by the way, I'll be honest, man, when that happened, I had no words. I had no feeling. I felt dead inside. I felt like my whole world collapsed. And this was after I lost my job 3 months before he passed, and I was bullied and harassed at work. I was blamed for things. I mean, I'd put up with a lot of mental stress during that 9 months. And when I lost my kid, it was, in a lot of ways, it was a reality check for me in life, and a really harsh one, by the way. Um, but I'll share something about the more moving parts of it. It was hard to watch my wife go through that shock and still have to give birth to my son and go through her pain. And there's this helpless feeling as a man because we don't experience pregnancy. We don't have to give birth to this child. Women have a whole different experience with this, and so as a man, we don't really know how to relate to that. We don't really know what to say or how to do something because we're fixers. We like to fix things. That's just what
Right.
we do,
Right.
And so what I'll share was one of my most painful, but it was one of my most interesting moments of that thing. I left the hospital after not being with my son for more than 24 hours. I had to go home, and it was sad. I wanted to spend more time with him. I wanted him to be there. I wanted a beating heart. I wanted a kid that was screaming in my ears and, bringing a new source of pain in my life. I wanted that bad, and I couldn't have it. And so I left the hospital on my way home. Super angry, by the way. I've never been that angry in my life. I don't know what came over me. But I got at the traffic light, first light out of the hospital. All of a sudden, that anger, somehow from that boiling feeling, all of a sudden got really quiet and calm, like a calm lake on a winter day. And this clarity rush came through my head. I don't know what happened, but all these thoughts that were happening just evaporated, and there was nothing but clarity. And I felt this power come through me that said, you're at a turning point in life right now. Right now, you're in the midst of grief. You're about to be in depression. You have an opportunity right now. As much as this sucks, you have an opportunity. And what that voice told me is that, are you going to tolerate and allow the crap you just put up with for 9 months in your life going forward from right here, right now at this traffic light? Are you going to allow that? Are you going to put up with that? Are you going to be that person that bends to everybody's whim and just allows that stuff to happen? Is that going to be you? Because you have an opportunity right now. You have a choice to make. And that clarity, my brother, oh man, that is the day life changed for me. I made a lot of hard decisions. I stepped up for myself. It was a real hot mess for my wife and I to go through the grieving process and the loss of that. But we came out better people with meaning and purpose because we made those hard decisions in that moment at the traffic light.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of healing that can happen in grief. There's a lot of pivotal life changes. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of change course in your life. It's there for you. It's there for everybody that goes through grief. And I'm not saying, by the way, it's not easy. It is not going to happen in 1 second. It ain't going to happen like that. Um, there's going to be moments that you're going to feel like crap, and you're going to feel like the whole world's collapsing on you. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so when I went through that, man, it made me a better person. What I didn't see it in the moment, I can tell you now, 2, 3 years after the fact, I can tell you it was a blessing for me. But in the moment, it's hard to work through that. It really is.
It really is. And it leads me to my question because as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, because after when my son passed away, I went 2 years in this brain fog where I could tell I can't tell you what I did. Right. All I knew, I had a routine. I knew I went to work because my bills were still getting paid. Right. I was still working out because I was still into bodybuilding. And so, but I had isolated myself so much that, I didn't have to come out of my house. I really didn't. And this is before COVID. So, I mean, when I went to the store, I was real quick. I knew what I wanted. I was in and out. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to have a conversation. I'm in and out. Boom, boom, boom. I'm back home. And the only times I really remember coming out the house is that time. Other than that, I stayed in the house. Like people didn't even know if I was home or not because once they see my car out there and everything, but I never came. My door was always closed. If you came and knocked on my door, I would ignore you. I really would. I was like, I don't want to deal with you. And so for those 2 years after my son passed away, that's what it was like. But then after my mother passed away, 9 months later is when I started planning out my suicide. I lost everything anyway. Made some really bad decisions. So we talk about the grieving process when it comes down to men. And like like I tell people, like if you don't understand the love language of grief when it comes down to men, it will always look chaotic, look very very chaotic. And it's those simple factors that you put in. You know, we're not taught to do these things. We're not taught how to navigate these things. We don't know how to articulate what's going on with us. And so we express ourselves in different ways to protect our masculine nature. Now, when you're going through it, most people will say, "Oh, that's toxic masculinity." And I really, really, there's a fine line between true toxic masculinity and grieving. They may look the same, but perception versus reality, they're not. And so it is, this is where we get to educate people on that, right? And go really understand the interpretation that you're using from the terminology that you're using. Because what may look chaotic to you may be a trauma response to me.
Mhm.
And like I said, 9 months after my mom passed away, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Talk about those bad decisions. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I figured that the only way that I can be done with this is that be done with this world. I didn't see the other side. Now, I say that to say this because I look 5 years now down the line doing the work that we're doing. Do you ever feel that your experience fast tracked you? And the reason why I'm asking this is because there's people that are doing the work that we're doing right now. You're doing your coaching, me doing grief work, that have been doing it 20, 30 years. And it seems as if our experiences has catapulted us to an area where, saying like it just seems like it's been fast tracked. Do you ever feel that way?
I feel that way a lot in life, Tony. I'm glad you said that, brother, because for those of you that are watching today, I don't know your spiritual journey, but I'll say that I found my spiritual place back in 2020. And something that I came to learn that God does in my life, and if people are spiritual, reflect back on moments of your life, because what I'm about to say, I've noticed this happen a lot. I always say God is kind of like a slingshot, where you pull the
Mm,
thing back like this, and when God lets go of that thing, you go flying. And so, what's happened in my life a lot, and I only looked through this when I was going through my grief and depression. God kept pulling me back, and the pullback string was losing my grandparent, losing my son, losing my job, having to move across the country. All these events started just pulling back, and this thing was getting taut, and I could feel it. And what's been happening lately in my life, ever since I started coaching, that slingshot just let loose. God finally said, "Choop, you're going to go flying, bro. You're going to go flying 100 miles an hour in the right direction." And he does these experiences. It's kind of why my philosophy in life is that all these things happen for us. They don't happen to us. They happen for
mm,
us.
yeah.
Because in our life, if we always say things are happening to us, we're a victim of it, right? And we'll start
Yes.
making decisions that may not be in our best interest. I won't go so far as to say they're not in our best interest. I'll say they might not be. It depends on your path and where you're at. But I can say this: if you look at it from it's happening for me, there's a purpose and a meaning behind this. And now, for me, losing my son, I get asked this all the time. How can you say losing your son's a blessing and a gift? And how can you talk about him so freely after such a tragic loss? And I said, I lived in that tragic loss place a lot. I cried, I got angry, I was sad, I was depressed, I felt like giving up in life. I one time I was trying to make a box for his ashes. I got so mad I stepped on the thing, crushed my heel. I was in a cast for 6 weeks,
Mm,
walking around. And in that moment, by the way, I was in so much pain, it wasn't funny. I mean, I was limping around the house like a toddler on hands and knees.
mm,
And what I'll share about it that I learned, big lesson, is that anger is the part of you that loves you the most. And so to answer your
Mm.
question, Tony, that you brought up, by the way, is that there's people been doing this 20, 30 years. We're just starting our journey now, helping
Yeah.
people. 20, 30 years ago, the world was a whole different place. The mindsets were different, psychology was different, social norms were different. 20, 30 years ago, as a man, it was, well, you're a man, just suck it up, man. You gotta just push through this. You got this. You don't gotta worry about this. And what I've come to find talking to lost parents, the dads, by the way, because there's lots of support for mom, lots of it.
Yeah.
There's more
Yeah.
support for women than you can shake a fist at. But what about the dads? Dads lose too. And what I saw with dads is dads don't have somebody to talk to. Dads are stuck in this trap of, I just got to suck it up. I got to be a man. I got to be strong. I got to just hide those things and live life. And guess what? The sad part is all the men I talked to that were going down that train, and I opened the door for them to have a place to talk. And I said, hey, this is a safe place. There's no judgment. There's no fear. There's nothing off limits. Tell me how you really feel. I watch men cry in front of me, and I watch
Yes.
men actually open up and say,
Yeah.
I'm really hurt. I'm really sad. This loss hit me in ways I never thought that I would ever see. And I don't know how to process this. I'm lost. Can you help me? And when you see grown men like that, and I'm only saying this from the old terminology of 20, 30 years ago, when you see men jump to that level, that's what being an actual man is, right in that place, is being vulnerable with your emotions, being true to you, not that image that we make of men, but being you as a man and
Yep.
what you're going through. That when you can reach that level, my friend, that's what I consider a strong man. Somebody that's comfortable with that emotion, comfortable with that vulnerability, comfortable enough to say, I'm not okay today. I'm not. And I'm okay with that. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that you and I, by the way, I feel like we're on the same page and talk a lot about that. But I want to help men see that when you're this big, tough, strong dude, you're just suppressing emotions. And something that I've learned, by the way, that I teach people in coaching is that if the emotion's back here and it's really, really small, it's really easy to deal with. You know, we got opportunities to work through it, talk about it, find a new strategy. When we get way out here, when we got 10, 20, 30 emotions going on, or grief and loss we haven't dealt with in 20 years, we're not dealing with just one emotion. We're dealing with 20 or 30 compounded. And so now we've got our very complex grief process that's kind of like peeling back an onion. How far we have to get to the core. And that's what makes people's grief journeys, by the way, individualistic. And I tell
Mm.
people all the time, don't compare things. Tony's loss of his child, his son, radically different from mine. We might have similarities to a degree, but his loss is his loss. My loss is my loss. Your loss, by the way, is your loss. Your healing journey is
Hmm.
yours. I
Yeah.
can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how to do it. I can't say it's going to be fine in 6 months or a year or five. I can't tell you that. But what we can do is, as a coach, and what I do is that I'm giving you a safe place to talk and be open and explore those emotions and feeling and work through that healing process. And I've watched people go through it, and in 3 months, I've watched people take 10 years. And so I just say that, be kind to yourself. Grief doesn't have a timeline. It doesn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and I tell people, don't think you're going to be fully healed from things either. That's a big fallacy I've learned. Don't ever say you're fully healed, because if you're fully healed, by the way, it means that a lot of those things you just gotten over it and you moved on. They don't really have meaning there when you're fully healed. I like to use the term, by the way, because I've watched a lot of people go through this. There's moving forward. There's not moving on. There's moving forward. When we have grief, by the way, that's the friend we didn't ask for, man. That's the
Yeah.
friend we didn't want. We
Yeah.
didn't. You didn't ask to lose your son. I didn't ask to lose mine, but it happened. And so I won't go on and say that, oh, it just happened. It's an event. It happened in my life, and act like it didn't happen. No, it's always there. It's always going to bark. Some days it's
Mhm.
this quiet. Some days it's loud, and it takes over you. And
Yes.
to accept yourself fully and say, sometimes my grief is quiet. Sometimes it's really loud, like a roaring ocean. But I'm okay, and I'm here, and I'm processing this. I'm feeling this. And know that healing's a continuous process, man. Be kind to yourself. Yeah.
That's true. We talked about this, right? In this process, you do have to love yourself, or you you have to treat yourself as if you're somebody who's worth being loved. People have heard me say this in the last one. I'm going to keep saying it because it's such a true statement. You have to treat yourself as if you're somebody worthy of being loved. And I stole that quote from Jordan Peterson. It was just one of those things that stuck with me because I didn't know nothing about self love or self care or any of those things, right? Because the interpretation of being a man, I am only valued for what I can provide, right? Women, children, and dogs are valued more than men in life in general. And it's a sad statement that it has to be that way, but it's the reality. It's the reality that has been pressed upon us. And so when men are going through some of the most tragic things, the society says no one cares about what you're going through. We only care about what you can provide. So get out there, suck it up, man up, and go and provide. It has no one cares. It took me a long time, man. It took me a
Yeah.
very, very long time to realize. It took well, let me just say this. It took a long time and a lot of good people in my life to show me that I was cared for, to show me um, that I had a safe space, right? And but most of it I had to create my own because I had to go through my go through, as they say, right? I had to grow through what I was going through. And so now, let's address the misinterpretation of masculinity, right? Like toxic masculinity and masculinity in general and the aspects that come along with that, and why is it so misunderstood or misspoken with those terminologies? Because there's a thin line. Very seldom you will meet a toxic man or a toxic female, right, within that
Yeah.
masculine and feminine energy. So why is there such a misinterpretation from what people see than what people are experiencing?
There's a lot of factors that go into that. I could talk about that for hours, but I'll nutshell it in a good way that I see is that in my coaching practice, when I bring that up, I talk about how we have belief systems. We have beliefs and convictions. We all do, and they're different based on our societal influence, our family values, and also the people we're around every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I personally, I don't go to the gym anymore. I work out at home, and I'll share why. Every time I go to the gym and I see somebody jocking up in the weight room and just trying to show off and be really, pompous, and I'm just the biggest guy in the gym, and I see that ego come out. And that's where, we talk about the fine line between toxic masculinity and masculinity. When you let that ego take over as a man, that will get you in so much trouble in life, my friend. And people will tell you, by the way, that's normal. That's just how men are. Couldn't be further from the truth. That's
Right.
not that's not that's not a man.
Right.
Uh, we use ego, by the way, as a defense mechanism. That's where ego comes out. It's a defense mechanism because there's something we perceive as a threat or something we don't understand, and so to protect ourselves as men, we puff up our feathers like a peacock. And
Mm-hmm.
so the reason I use the gym example is because every time I've gone to a gym, I see guys and they're going, "Oh, I can lift this weight better than you," or "Oh, I can lift more weight than you," and it's this competition thing that starts happening. And so in life, especially for men, and it's what I teach in my coaching practice. It doesn't matter what gender you are, by the way. When we enter that competition space where there's ego a lot, and there's just this, I gotta be better than somebody, or I'm better because I can hide my emotions from things,
Mm.
we're actually weakening ourselves as individuals. We're weakening our person. And this is where I get very nervous about that when I see people because I go, now I don't know who you are. I don't see the real you underneath that. And so I'll see a puffed up, egotistical kind of thing going on. But then I start asking this better question in the coaching format of what's causing this person to feel this way? What's underneath that?
Right.
Because I
Right.
know this ego thing is just a big smoke screen and a cover because you've got a hurt going on. You got an emotion you're not dealing with. You might have some grief or some loss or maybe trauma. Something is leading you down that path. It's not who you are. If you go to the gym, by the way, and you work out for you, and you come home and you say, like, when I jump on the bike every day for 5 miles. I do 5 push or 5 curl ups, 5 pull ups, and 20 push ups. If I hit those goals, I'm happy for myself. I don't care what anybody thinks about myself. I care about what I think about. And so when we jump in that ego place, that's where it gets dangerous of this masculinity versus toxic masculinity. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we got to be careful and mindful as men that that ego, it's going to put you in a bad place, man. It's going to separate you from who you are. And
Yes.
um, and if we start doing that, by the way, we're measuring ourselves by external factors. Well, what's somebody
Mm.
think about me? What's somebody feel about me? Or who? Oh, so and so said I'm this, so I'm gonna take that on as a belief. And now who you are just got covered up. You're not even who you are anymore. And I see it in coaching all the time when help people break through their ego, just like peeling back the layers of the onion. When I see the real person in people, which I pulled out many times in my coaching practice, I point it out to them. I say, hey, I just saw the real you. Did you feel that? And the funny part is you'll watch someone's face and their body language completely change in an instant.
Yeah.
And they themselves are like, ooh, what's ooh. They start doing this kind of like you could, like you
Like,
got
what
like you
is
got
that, right?
yeah, like you got a sweaty shirt from working out too much. You're like, this thing's sticking to me, like, ugh. And I tell them, I said, that's icky feeling, by the way, is you forgot yourself, and I just showed you who you are. And now you got to remember who that is, by the way, because it's not my job to do it. But you now know who you are. You saw it. You got scared by it, but you saw it. So now by the way, you can separate ego from who you are. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you can actually, as a man, by the way, that's a lot of personal growth for you. And that's some good shit, pardon my language.
No, no,
Um,
you're good. You're good.
when you can get there as a man, dude, that's power. That's actual power. That's personal power. So
Man, look, you speak my language. You already know you speak my language, man. Because being a grief coach, I watch these things come about, and I watch these men. And people always tell me that it's impossible to get men to talk. I said it's not impossible to get men to talk. You have to put them in the right atmosphere to be able to do that. Men have to be comfortable. So what I found was and women think that they're so slick, right? They go, oh, you can put women around a whole bunch of other women, they gossip and things like that. And I started laughing. And somebody asked me one time, they was like, what are you laughing about? I said, because it's what you don't understand. Men are the same way. Only difference is women will do it around a bunch of people. Men will do it around men that they feel comfortable with. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's been times where, I be doing my groups and everything, and I'm watching the men as they start to get to know one another. They form these brotherhoods, and you know what I'm saying? And they get to talk, and I just be listening to them. And it's like, wow, if I had a video camera right now, and if it was okay, I would record this because y'all sound just like the women over in the other groups doing the same damn thing. You know what I'm saying? Like this, but it's the most beautiful thing that you can ever want to imagine, right? Or ever want to witness, because they're smiling, they're crying, they're laughing, they're joking around, they're talking deep into conversations about a lot of things, right? They're comfortable with one another. They're healing. They're healing, and I just sit back, man, just in awe that I get to witness this. I'm just like, man, there's no better feeling than to witness these things going on. The ego and pride are out the window. You know what I'm saying? They're now embracing that masculinity, which allows them to be true men, right? There's no peacock, and there's no putting your chest out there. There's no none of that. It's a matter, I'm gonna respect this man's journey. I'm gonna respect this man's feelings, because man, I can relate to what he's feeling. This man is going through addiction right now. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna be there with him to help him get through this. Oh, this man is going through depression right now. Man, I know what that feels like. Let me walk with this dude, because I don't want to be reading about him in the paper tomorrow. Right? There's a sense of accountability, and and again, I go back to it, the brotherhood that comes along with it, that connection. And I love that, just to be a part of it, because I know, like I'm just a small portion in that right there, man. And so, God has truly blessed me to be able to witness the love and the forgiveness and the faith that these guys have. No matter the background that they come from, because I work with guys who don't believe too,
Hmm.
right? But it's
Yeah.
it's the it's the connection that they have with one another, that respect, and the journey that they all been on, that they embark on together. And I find that just to be this magical, beautiful thing, because I tell people there's nothing more beautiful when you see a man healing. It's as you said, peeling back the layers of that onion, right? You know, um, and
Yeah.
watching it reveal itself. Now, one thing I want to ask this because when dealing with men in such an emotional state, do you find that you have to suppress your emotions to allow them the space to be able to do that? And the reason why I say that, because being someone who's in a grief field, I have to remind myself that my story has no place in their space, right? And so I'm very empathetic, and I would take on people's emotions, but I have to suppress it to not allow that my emotions to control the atmosphere that we're in and everything. Because I have to tell myself it's not about me, although I'm feeling it. I can relate to it in my own different way, but I have to push that off to the side and go, allow me to take this away from them without making this moment about me. Now, I pose that question to you. Do you find yourself having to do that as well?
I do that just a little bit differently because I had a meditative experience back in 2021. I'll share a little bit about that, but I also read a book called Living, what's it called? Untethered Soul. I read that
Mm,
book. It's a beautiful book. When it comes to emotions, when I'm working with men, sometimes it can be hard to handle the emotions. Sometimes sometimes if somebody hits a chord with you the right way, if I'm explaining this correctly, but if it resonates really deeply with you, you'll feel like you want to take something on, and that's just natural, by the way. That's our humanness coming out. Nothing to do with men, women, whatever. That's just being a human. And so what I try to do with emotions is what I tell people, especially in coaching, is don't suppress your emotions. That's ignoring something up here, and that's what you end up, that buildup of emotions over life. So what I do say though with emotions is that they're messages. If you actually listen to your emotions, by the way, and I've taught a lot of people how to do this, and it's absolutely amazing when I have them have breakthroughs with this. But if they say,
mm,
for example, I talked to a guy recently who's 58 years old, and he connected with me in a group. He got raped in his 20s, and he's told nobody about it his whole life. And he's having a legit crisis in life right now, and I don't blame him at all. But when he started sharing emotions with me, I started feeling, it's like, oh my God, like how could somebody do that to you? And how could you live your life like that? I just, like, my heart started like just opening up into this, like, I've got empathy for this guy. I feel bad for you. Like, what, how can I help you? All of a sudden that started coming out. And then I said, that was his experience. That's his life journey. You
mhm,
don't take that on, man. You can feel that and allow yourself to feel it and say, wow, I feel sad for this person. I feel empathy for this person. I can't believe that experience happened to him. Allow yourself to feel it, but don't hang on to it. The example I'll give, by the way, that I have to remind myself a lot when I'm in coaching is I'm an observer. I'm not in that emotion. I'm not in that person's life. I'm not making decisions for them. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm strictly an observer. I'm listening, I'm seeing, I'm hearing what's going on. And so I have to keep myself in that place. When you do get those emotions, and I get them all the time, I say, they're feeling that too. They're feeling the same thing you're feeling right now. And
mhm,
that's okay. And I use this phrase a lot in my coaching and grief, by the way. Tell yourself that's okay. Say that to yourself. It's a powerful phrase to allow yourself to feel that emotion and be present with it. And that's something that I have to teach men quite a bit is sometimes we default to anger. Anger is the part of you that loves you the most, bro. Anger's not bad. Doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're mishandling grief or you don't know what you're doing. It does not mean any of that stuff. what does anger actually mean for you? And I found out on my own journey, by the way, when I got angry and crushed my foot, I loved my son that much that it came out in anger. My love had to go somewhere. And unfortunately, it ended up in me busting my foot. When I realized, by the way, that I love my kid that much, anytime I got angry and felt those feelings, all of a sudden that anger got replaced with love. And I would tell myself, you're feeling a lot of love for Caden right now. Caden's feelings are surging. Your love is coming out, and that's okay. You're getting angry right now because he's not here, and you can't show him that. That's why you're angry.
Mm.
I do that same process when I coach men, in particular. This guy too, I said, "How are you feeling today?" I ask him those questions a lot. How are you feeling? I'm trying to get him to express himself and say, besides I'm angry, saying, I feel depressed today. I feel really down today. Like, what's causing you to feel this? So to answer your question with that, I myself keep my emotions in check for the most part. If it is something really hard, I'll write it down as I'm in a conversation with somebody so I can get it out of here so I can still be present with someone.
Right.
But it's always an opportunity. Emotions are messages, folks. Emotions are messages. If you
Very
ever
true.
feel, have you ever, I mean, I'll ask you, Tony, have you ever had that time where you say, I really don't know how I feel right now, but I'm feeling kind of like this? Have you ever had a moment like that?
When I'm by myself, yes. And the reason being, and this is where I'm learning about your coaching, and because I'm incorporating those techniques and stuff within myself, right? So I know how to show up with other people. You're teaching me, and so this is when it comes down to grief. Um, Grief is full of all of these emotions, so I literally have to disconnect from the emotional aspect of it because of the simple fact of the gift of grief is my, and I'm speaking from my perspective. My gift of grief is so bright, it's so prominent that I attract people who are actively grieving, actively looking for support. And so I realize that in order for me to be effective in the field that I'm in, I literally have to disconnect my emotions from those things. And sometimes I forget to turn them back on. So here I am walking around with no emotions whatsoever, right? Until I get into a conversation and people are like, wow, you really don't feel anything, do you? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm just me, right? My gift of grief is a godsend. And God said, with this gift, there comes boundaries, there comes rules. Since this is such a, a shared human experience, your emotions have no place in this, but you have to surrender to this in order to do what you need to do. So that's where I've learned how to do it, right? And so for me, disconnecting has how I maneuver. Um, when I am by myself and I'm able, my grief shows up. I do have to sit with it. I have to allow myself to surrender to the hurricane that is healing, right? I have to be able to, because I learned when it shows up, I learned to instead of standing in it, I learned to sit in it and learn to slow down the circular motion of all of these different things to see what's poking out. Because what I realized what was going on is that the things that were poking out were things that I needed to take out, open up and look at it, address these things. And when I put it back within the inside of this hurricane, I realized that it disappeared. Right. So that's how I learned. It's like, oh, wow, let me see what this is right here. And I will open it up and it'd be something like, hey, do you remember that time when you watched when you got the news that your friend J Lo had just got killed by a skinhead in jail? Like, yeah. Remember the relationship that you had with him? Yeah, that's what this is. And I have to go in there and I have to remember the times, I have to remember the laughter, the conversations that I've had with him, because that's his way of coming to me and saying, hey, Tone, man, long time no see. And I'm able to connect with the energy. And once I'm able to do that, I realized that it's teaching me. I put it back. And when I get up and step outside of the hurricane, I'm a student in that moment. And as I'm going along, in the next moment, someone comes along and they're looking for the lesson that I've just learned. So then I can become a teacher. I become a mentor. I give that to them and I let that moment go. And I go into my next moment. Like I've learned to live within the moments throughout the day. I have a thought about days. There's no such thing as bad days. There's just moments where you need to learn something and moments where you need to let it go. So you have to be able to distinguish those things, but not in an emotional aspect, right? Your
Yeah.
emotions can be controlled. They have nothing to do with what's going on in the world. People aren't here for your emotions. They're here for what you carry. And
Mhm.
Dr. Miles Monroe said it best. You're obligated to give that away. I operate within obligation. So, yes, I do have those moments where I do have to sit with it, but I don't take it personal because I realize that it's not about me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
The lesson is there for me to carry for someone else. I am merely a messenger of that to whoever needs it when they come about. Right.
Yeah.
So, this work that we do is such a selfless thing. We love the feeling of being able to serve, but the truth of the matter is that we do this because of the simple fact of we're obligated to. You've identified what you're supposed to do in the world. You know what your purpose is. You know why you're here. You understand that the path that you're on is so much bigger than what your experiences has been. When you can make life not about you, it becomes much more connected to those around you that need you the most. So in that time, you have to ask yourself a question. Who needs what I carry? And
Mhm.
how can I serve today? How can I serve this moment? And you kind of move within that realm, right? And life becomes beautiful because the more and more you put yourself out there, the more and more your gift starts to shine, the brighter light that you have, the more people are attracted to you. And God says,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about right there. Now you're living within servitude. Now you're living within the gift that I've given you. And then you realize everything that you've ever experienced had nothing to do with you at all.
That's the power, my friend. Exactly what you just said. Like
Right.
and I'm coming to learn that too, man. I most of my life I never understood that principle. I'm sitting there humbly saying this right now. I
Right.
didn't understand. I didn't understand it, and I didn't get it. I didn't see it. By the way, but when my journey, man, I've been isolated a lot the last 3 4 years. I really have. I just felt like I couldn't find my people in life, and especially when I went through grief and loss, I didn't want to be around people. Like how you said, you go out to the store, run back home. That was me. I did
Mm-hmm.
that. I was like, I want to talk to people. I don't want to be around people, because I couldn't find people that, could be there for me in that moment. So I did it myself. And what I realized out of that, though, is I closed a lot of doors in life by doing that. Now, I needed that time to heal, by the way, which I found my way through it. Wasn't pretty, but I found it. But what started happening to me the last 6 months, God started putting people on my path because of exactly what you just said. These experiences are not about me. They're not. I'm running across people now in my life like you, the guy that I met at my grocery store and a time of crisis I had last summer. God literally just goes, there you go. I'm gonna put these people right in your path for you. These are the people you need to talk to. And it's what I like to say in life that, I see people every day when I go to the store, by the way. I see people driving crazy down the road, cutting people off, trying to hit somebody in a parking lot, bumping into people in the store. I see a lot of this like in a hurry flash all the time. And it's a lesson I learned through my grief, by the way. You're going to get there when you're going to get there. You're going to be there when you're meant to be there. This
Yeah.
person that needs to be there for you, by the way, is going to show up for you when you need it. And this is where, after going through the losses I have, I'll tell you right now, man, 99% of problems I thought I had, they're not problems. They're
No.
not anywhere near it. That's it's like somebody turned the volume down to like 5 from 100. Turn the whole
Right.
volume down. And my mentality is I get there when I get there. That's how it is. If I if I'm at the grocery store and someone needs my help and I end up talking to them for half an hour, I'm meant to be here right now. This is where I'm supposed to be. This experience isn't about me, but it's what someone else needs.
There
And
you go.
maybe it's my job to be there. Maybe it's my job to listen. Maybe it's my job to share my experience when it's warranted, when it's needed. If I have a
Yeah.
story that resonates with somebody that makes them go, I can get through that. If he went through that, I can get through this. I can. I got some hope now. I got some faith.
Yeah.
And it's like you said earlier too about sitting with your grief. I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, cried the first 50 pages because his dad beat him half to death and his mom. I couldn't believe another human being was capable of that atrocity. But what I learned from Goggins about grief and loss and healing is that sometimes you got to sit in the fire, man. It is not fun. It does not feel good. It'll bring up a whole lot of emotions like anger and sadness and frustration and loss and sometimes happiness, sometimes relief. You feel all these things just moving around like a ping pong ball.
Mhm.
But you got to sit there, man. You got to feel that stuff. Got to give yourself the space. And that's where you can heal, is right in the fire. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that, brother.
No, I appreciate you bringing
Uh,
up Goggins because that was, when that was that philosophy right there. I was watching him because again, when I started this journey, man, I didn't have anybody to, help guide me, so I had to figure it out, And so what I did, I started watching motivationals, and it became those individuals like the Les Browns, the Tony Robbins, the David Goggins, and things like that, because I didn't have a whole lot of money to go see these individuals. And so I used to pretend like they were talking to me in the motivationals, like they were telling me about my life, right? And I would sit down and I watch YouTube, and man, I used to take what they said personal, but I listened to the journey because it sounded as if they were laying out my life because I was living it. Right? I was like, hold on, what did you do next? Right? I'm talking, what did you do next? And I'm listening to them. And they're talking about all of these things that they had to endure, the people that lied to them, the people that hurt them, the people that drug them through the mud, you know what I'm saying? The people that did all of these different things, and how throughout all of that, you know what I'm saying, the thousands of people that mistreated them, there was 2 or 3 that really genuinely wanted to help them.
yeah.
And it's like the crazy part about it is that, I'm listening to him. David's like, and you'll never know who it is because it's not the people that you think it is. Right. And they look just like the rest of them that try to do you dirty. And I was like, whoa, man. And then I started really experiencing it. And I realized that they were talking about me. And it became a personal journey. And then Goggins, I was listening to him. He said, you got to throw the mind into the fire, man. You have to beat on it. You have to beat on it. You have to beat on it. And that phrase, the mind is getting hard. The brain is getting hard. I'm callousing over my mind to deal with the things that life is going to throw at me so I don't have an emotional breakdown every time something happens. And I use that in a way to help me in grief, do the work that I do. Because now I realize how valuable that simple phrase was. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's
Yeah.
truly amazing. Right. But now you mentioned this a couple of times, and I just, I want to clarify, or not clarify, but add to it. I never want to take anything away from anyone, but I'm learning. So the anger, I'm gonna use this example. I was talking to a young lady not too long ago, and she was telling me how every time something happened, her dad got mad. Something tragic would happen, he would get mad, he would get angry, and things like that. And so I asked her a simple question. I said, "Have you ever seen your dad cry?" She goes, "No, I've never seen him cry before." I said, "Are you sure about that?" She goes, "Yeah, I've never seen my dad break down and cry." I said, "What if I told you that you have?" Now, see, this is where anger comes in because as children, men, we're told to man up. So our go-to when we're hurt, we're told you better stop crying, and we give you something to cry about. So we puff out our chest, we get angry. We got to go out there and pick a fight with people. We got to pick a fight with family members, our sisters, our siblings, whatever, right? And now I'm gonna move this into a more comic book setting. So there was a crossover between Hulk, Thor, and the Fantastic Four. Beautiful episode if you can break it down and understand the philosophy behind it. Now it all ties in. So the Thing from Fantastic Four had just lost Johnny Storm. Anybody know the history with the Fantastic Four? Do you know that Thing and Johnny Storm was best of friends? They were brothers. They were, you know what I'm saying, inseparable. So when he died, Thor and Hulk heard about it. The reason why I'm putting those two up because those are the two strongest ones, so to speak. Hulk can take a whole lot of damage. So can Thor. So Thor flies Hulk over to where Thing is. Thing is, he's angry. He is angry. And they drop off. Now, normally you get the notion that Hulk is going to Hulk smash some things. He didn't. He let the Thing beat up on him. And when he was done, the Thing went over there and started beating up on Thor. They took this beating. And then when it was all said and done, they're hugging each other. The Thing is crying. I say that to say this, because anger is how men cry. Perception versus reality. This is our go-to. So when men get angry, that is our way of saying, I don't have any release of these tears, because if I do, it's going to show that you're going to think that I'm weak. So to maintain my masculinity, my manhood, to let you know that I'm still a man, I have to do something manly. You may not understand it because we don't talk about it, right? Women look at us like, ooh, that dude's crazy. No, you're right. There's something wrong with him. Yeah, you're right. There's something wrong with him. That man is crying. You just see what you want to see. That's just why I say when men grieve, it's like a foreign love language that no one else speaks. Even when you got angry and things like that, because of the love that you had, you didn't know how to express it. The tears never came, but the anger did. You substituted one for another. This is how men cry.
That's beautifully said, brother. Beautifully way
Right.
to put that.
So, and that's why it's important that we educate on creating an atmosphere for men to be able to substitute the anger back for the tears, because as you said before, we're all human. We're equipped with these things. Why are we taught not to express it? Because of social norms? Because of because of the pressure that people put upon us? No. We're human beings. God said, no, you are equipped with these things. I've given you these things. Hell, even Jesus grieved. Jesus cried, right? God cried when he saw his children out there acting up. And did you bigger than them? Are you crazy? So you can't tell me that Yahweh, Jesus, wept, but you can't do it? Jesus wept for his best friend Lazarus. Remember, he was like, that is my dude right there, man. You mean to tell me Lazarus is dead? Show me where he at. And he went in there and he looked at Lazarus and was like, brother, oh man, brother, you gone. But I got you. Because I ain't willing to let you go just yet, right? And he kissed Lazarus on the head and Lazarus woke up. Jesus wept. And you mean to tell me that we're bigger than that? If you can hold that philosophy, it makes humanity that much more enjoyable. That someone that you hold in such high regard has the ability to weep and grieve as a man. Yeah, nah, we don't hold a candle to that. So we might as well follow suit. Since you want to follow Jesus, follow suit.
Yeah.
Understand his lessons. When Jesus died and God cried, he turned his head because he took on the sin of the world. God cried too, because he made it rain. Because he couldn't believe that you just killed his son. Although he knew what needed to happen, he just lost his only begotten son. And you mean to tell me that we bigger than that? Come on, man. It's the expression that we have. It's societal norms. At some point, somewhere down the line, we put expectations on men that's killing us.
It is. Right? Something that I've learned in my coaching. I learned it from Tony Robbins, by the way. We have to have a balance of masculine, feminine energy. There's got to be this ebb and this flow with those energies, because I'll share, when there's too much masculine energy, it destroys things. When there's too much feminine energy, it destroys things. When we find that balance right here with men and women, when we find that right there, man, we don't have those out of whack ego things and pride and all those nasty things that actually destroy us. What we do have is acceptance. What we do have is understanding. What we do have is compassion and empathy, respect for one another, appreciation. And when we live in that place, by the way, men can cry. Men can say, I'm hurt. Men can say, I'm sad. Men can say, I'm grieving. And nobody's going to look at you and say, oh, that's a weak man. What are you talking about? Why are you being like that, man? Man up. No, that doesn't exist in that space. It doesn't.
No.
And that's the beauty of, if we can break that societal norm of things. That's why I said a lot of people, I've asked people over the years, like, why do you do X, Y, Z that you do? And they go, I don't know, just raised that way. And I always sat there in my head and said, you never thought to question that? Why you think the way you do?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody told you to drive the school bus at 50 miles an hour and you knew darn well you're going to kill 20 children, would you just do it? I mean, most people would say, well, no, why the hell would I do that? And I said, that's what you're doing with your thoughts every day, man. You're mindlessly going through the motions on autopilot. And that's where, when we end up in that autopilot place, dangerous stuff happens. I mean, I know one of my in-laws' husband, they lost their kid to a heroin overdose when he was 20. I'll share this with you. The dad told me, he said, I picked up a drinking problem after that, ended up in jail for DUI, never drank since. And he said, I was on autopilot through my grief when that happened. And that's what I chose to do. And I messed my life up. I'll tell you that. I messed my life up. And he told me the same thing. He said, I'm telling you so you don't make the mistake I made. And that made me sit there and say, I got to find a different way to handle my stuff. And if somebody came to me and said, I ended up in jail with a record because I dealt with my grief in a wrong way, that I should have had a different way to do things, I'm going to listen up, and and that involves you changing your beliefs, I remember a Tony Robbins event back in 2020. I remember how powerful this story was. His dad was, broke, didn't have a lot of money. It was Thanksgiving. They didn't have food to put on the table. His dad left, just bounced right out of the family. And his mom broke down and cried. And he himself was just like, I don't even know what's happening right now. And this is all happening when he's a kid. Somebody knocked on his door that day, later in the afternoon, brought food for his whole family. It was a group of Hispanic women in the community that raised food and money and everything through the church. The biggest thing that stuck with me through that story he shared, and I kind of summated it, but the biggest story he shared with me in that moment was that if strangers care about me, I care about them. And what am I going to do about that? And that really stuck in my head the last 5 years. And so when I hear about men that are grieving, I want to go help. I don't know who you are, man. I don't know your background. I've never been around you in my life before. But I know that as a stranger, I care about you. And if I care about you, you probably care about me. And now this problem that we got in life, by the way, whether that's grief or loss or trauma, whatever it is, us as strangers, we can come together and work through that. We can make something beautiful of that together. And giving giving men that space, by the way, it's uncomfortable for a lot of men because we're fighting social norms. But when we fight through those and give men that space to heal through that, we're changing the world one step at a time through that. And we're making it that much more acceptable for men to say, I'm not angry. I'm going through grief. I'm going through loss. I'm hurt. I'm sad. It's okay for me to cry. And that's what we should, that's what your work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing is exactly that. I want men to know that that whole tough guy thing with the ego, man, it ain't you, brother. It ain't you. Society said it was you. And
Yeah.
that's not your belief. It's not who you are. I know who you are underneath all that crap from society. And that's the person that I want to give power to. Because that one, by the way, is the real man in you. And that's the one that's going to heal and do some really great shit in your life. Straight up. It's going to be powerful, man.
It is, man. It is, brother. You man, powerful story, man. Powerful stuff right there, man. And I'm not gonna hold you up too long, because I know we was both in the midst of eating as well and everything, man. But I couldn't pass up the opportunity to have this conversation with you. Yesterday, we missed each other, but we got each other today, man. And it was everything I knew it was going to be. And we got so much more coming up as well. And so with that being said, man, as we begin to wrap this up, how can people find you?
So you guys can find me on my website at acceptancecoach.com. And I'm also on Facebook. You can look me up on my name there. I've been getting a lot of followers lately because I've been reaching out in the grief community and trauma communities, and I'm reaching out to help people. I'm on a mission of God right now. I'm out to serve and help and contribute to other people. So you guys can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on there too. But I'm just, if you guys want, reach out to me. I'm always open to connect. And like I said, I run into people every day that need somebody to talk to. And I'm that person in the world, by the way, that's going to stand up and give it. So look forward to connecting with you guys.
Most definitely. And you did send your information over there to me, right? I thought I saw an email from you.
I did.
Yeah. Okay, so I can go in and I'm gonna plug your information into the YouTube channel so people have that information and can get a contact with you and things like that. But now my one last question. I love this question ever since it was asked to me, and so I pose this question to you: if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh man, my superpower. I just want to give people happiness in life, brother. If I could have one superpower, it'd be to make people happy. After everything I've gone through in my life, I just want other people to be happy in their own path and their own journey. I would give them happiness.
I could definitely dig that, man. I could definitely dig that. I was saying in the earlier podcast, I was saying, the more and more we evolve as people in our thoughts and in our healing, our superpowers change. The things that we want to do change. Like I started off, and it's still, like if I add this in, this would just be one of my superpowers, empathy, right? And so when I posed the question to myself today, because I do a lot of self-reflection, and I asked myself that question, Tony, today, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And today I said, I would offer healing to those that needed it the most.
That is beautiful. That's beautiful, my friend. Beautiful.
Right, but it changes now. So I have empathy and I have healing, right? So I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I'm here for it. I'm here for all the smoke, okay? I'm here for it all, brother. I'm here for it all. And with that being said, Chris, man, thank you for joining me today and having this conversation. I can't wait till all the other stuff that we're going to be doing and bringing people together. And for everyone out there who's listening in, I see you guys out there. Thank you guys for tuning in. And if it's your first time tuning in, do me a favor. The information is going down on below over there. Follow me on my social medias. I got a website up there. But most importantly, if you want to support the channel, go to YouTube, Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop an episode. And go back and check out some of the other ones. But maybe this is not for you, but maybe it can work with somebody else. do me a favor, share it with them, right? Help us get it out there and reach more people. And again, I am Tony Nitch. I'm your host. This is the #1 podcast for conversations around death, dying, and grief. And this is going to close out this episode. Guys, I love you. Thank you for your support. We're going to see you in the next one. Peace.